All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, we are live. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I know the Facebook thing is different. I know you used to being on Instagram, but it is different. I'll get there, but I just have to figure out the Instagram thing. I'm so happy that you made it on here with us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Facebook family, I am so excited to share my guest for today. This is someone who I've been following for a minute, and she's an amazing person, amazing advocate for educators, especially women of color. And I have brought her on to share some of her golden nuggets with our audience. And so, if you are a teacher, a leader, she has some information for you that you can put in your tool belt to move forward for this school year. So, I'm excited to have you.
Yes,
So,
thank
thank you so much
you.
for coming. How was your day today?
My day was pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty
How
good.
was yours?
It was pretty good. Thank you for asking. So
Good.
tell the audience, Deidra, tell everyone a little bit who you are. Who is Deidra?
So my name is Deidra Fogarty, and I am the founder of Black Girls Teach. I am a veteran educator. I've been in education for the past 15 years. I'm super passionate about education. Started teaching as a second grade teacher and have worked in just many different capacities, from being, like I said, second grade teacher to a school leader to literacy coach to now I'm currently a special education teacher in Washington, D.C. Absolutely love everything education, but then there's so many things about it that it's like a love-hate relationship. And I
Yeah.
think because of that, I've been able to find my voice in education by really being able to advocate and speak up about those things that I do not love about education, to really
Absolutely.
just push us to start thinking differently about things, and in hopes that, people start to speak up more about things or just dig a little bit deeper into some of the educational issues that we have so that we really can reform those things. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's really, that's one of the reasons why I started following you and you caught my attention. One, because you were fearless. Two, because you were saying things that typically we don't want to say out loud because we want to be politically correct. And you didn't have a problem, you don't have a problem speaking your mind. But then you're also actionable. So you don't just talk about things, you actually put things in action. So when you started your journey of doing Black Girls Teach, prior to that, were you someone that you saw yourself as using your voice, or did Black Girls Teach kind of bring that out of you?
I know I hear echo. Sorry. Okay, it's good now. I definitely have always been that person who has used my voice. Even just from the beginning of my career, that was just, it's hard for me it's always a struggle for me to just bite my tongue. I think I've learned how to be more tactful, and I've learned like when to say things and when not to say things. But even earlier in my career, I would be that person that would ask questions or would, bring up something. And I think as I became more experienced in my career and then worked in different types of schools and gained a lot of experience from that, I just felt just more confident to be able to speak to things. And I think also because I'm the type of person where I'm a learner, I'm always a student, and for me, I'm always constantly just growing in my craft. So if I'm speaking to something, it's probably because I've been reading about it, I've been studying it, I practiced it, I implemented it, I've seen it in action. And that's why I can speak about it so confidently. And I've always been like that, always. And I mean, if you ask some of my coworkers that I work
Your
with, they will
sisters and your
say,
mom,
yeah,
yeah.
they will not be surprised that I am doing what I'm doing now, because I've always been that person that at the time it seemed like I was a rebel, because I would be
Right.
saying those things that other people would, they come up to me after the meeting and be like, yeah, I agree with everything. Right. But now, so it kind of just was transitioned into Black Girls Teach was just a way just for me to express even more on a larger scale some of the things that I've been thinking about or discussing with my circle of educator friends.
You know, what's interesting is you and I met, well, really hadn't met. You reached out, we reached out to you. Well, we connected, and I got to be a guest speaker on one of your retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to listen to other panels and things of that nature. And what I found was I just didn't realize, I mean, I knew, but there's so many women of color, educators of color, that are suppressing their voices, even the ones who are on social media that are out there. Because I've watched interviews and they'll say they're out there, but in their own schools and buildings, they're not the same. So the social media has allowed them to use their voice, but it's interesting, but not to impact what they're doing in their building. That makes sense. Like they're afraid to use their voice in the building, but they use this platform. So what would you say for a teacher or educator, even a leader? Because I would have to say this, not always, there are leaders who also feel sometimes not that they don't have the ability to use their voice for whatever reason, you know, backlash, or just because they're supposed to be leading the vision of the district and so forth. How does someone find that inner voice in themselves? Like, you know, for you it was easy because that's just how you were. But what if I wasn't that teacher, but now I'm starting to be more enlightened and aware? How do I find that voice and going about that and sharing how I feel about things?
Yeah, so I mean, well, hold on. I hear a little bit of an echo. Do you hear it? Okay. All right. I don't hear it anymore. All right, good. So I think it's one of those things where, you know, I think first and foremost, I think before anybody like starts to speak up and things like that, I'm a firm believer in just making sure that you have it together in your classroom and your craft and what you're doing, because there's a certain level of respect that somebody will have for you and actually listen to you when, you know, you are that teacher, that that your classroom is in order, kids are learning, great relationships. Like, I think those things are important, and that's the foundation. And as a leader too, because if you're someone and if you're leading a school and your school is struggling and you're struggling as a leader, people are less likely to actually listen to what you're saying. And same thing as a teacher, you know. So for me, I take my craft as the educator very seriously. Like I'm going to try to be the best teacher in the whole school. Like, I'm just gonna, like, that's just, and I do that because I know my students, that's what they deserve. They deserve to have that. So I think if you are somebody that wants to be able to use your voice more, the first thing that I would say is really just become strong in your craft and your position, whatever it is that you're doing in the school. Like, really take that seriously, because I do think that when you are strong in your position, people will listen to what you have to say. Like, there will be a certain level of respect that people have for you when you know, they can walk into your room, whether it's in person or virtually, and they can see all the amazing things that are happening. I know the second thing is that I really just go by, like, if I feel compelled and I know that I have to speak up, like I feel something in my body that tells me like, that's not right. And I think as educators, you know, we do have to kind of listen to that intuition when we're hearing things. Like, if we know that it really doesn't align with a best practice, or if it doesn't align with, like, you know, equity, it's not equitable. Like, if it's just the practices that we're learning, if we see that it's not aligning, I think then and there, you know, that's when you have to make a decision. Like, am I going to say something or am I not going to say something? Right. I think that there's a lot of things that go through people's minds as they're deciding that. It's like, okay, when is the time and place for me to be able to have this conversation? Because I've been in situations where I might raise my hand in the meeting and be like, I have a question, and then I'll ask it. And I know school leaders do not like that. They don't, I mean, you know, especially if you're asking it in a very just like straight up type of way, because some people can ask it in a way that is really, you know, and sometimes people are and sometimes people just get straight to the point. And I can ask it in both ways. It just depends on how I feel. So there's been times where I've asked and I brought up something in a meeting. There's been times where I've, you know, brought up maybe an email, or maybe I've gone to the principal to have a conversation. Like, I've approached it differently, but those were all, I think, as I became more experienced, I realized I need to be more strategic about how I'm using my voice. So I think it's important for educators to be strategic about how you're using your voice. But two more things I'm going to say. Anytime you are stepping into a space where you're going to speak up and say things that other people are not going to say and things that are really rooted in truth, you will get pushback. There's a certain level of risk that you are taking. And I think that it just comes with the territory where you have to make that decision of whether you're going to say something and speak up about something, or you're just going to kind of find other ways to be able to do that. Like maybe you're not speaking up in a meeting, maybe you're having a conversation with your school leader and you're giving ideas, and there's ways to work around it. But there's always a certain level of risk, and I think that that's something I'm very, very transparent about with my followers, in terms of things that I have experienced or gone through from being that person that has been vocal. But also, in addition to being the person that's been vocal, the person that, I'm vocal, I have strong classroom skills, I have a lot of leadership skills, things like that, that sometimes leaders, sometimes people can take that differently. It's just all those different scenarios that at play. And the last thing I want to say, though, is what I have found, there are in some situations you can say things nicely and you can be politically correct and you can send a nice email and you can do all the things the right way, and folks still won't listen. And I found that we're getting to a point now where some schools and organizations, are getting put on blast, and that's what's forcing them to actually take action. And I think, to me, that's sad. It's sad that somebody has to start an Instagram page about a school or organization for change to come. And I think that's why people are approaching things in that way, because that's the only way that some organizations are starting to take certain topics seriously.
Absolutely. And from the administrator perspective, I think one of the things, that's why it's so important to have relationships with your staff, because when those questions, and then you also have to take your personal feelings out of. So for example, if you're in those meetings and someone raises their hand, they're asking a question, you have to take your personal feelings that is not necessarily against you personally, that someone is really trying to get clarity on something that, that's proposing or that's being asked of them to do or so forth. And I think that's really important. My staff, since I've been there, I finished my 10th year, but my biggest thing is, if you have a problem, just be a problem solver with me. You come with a problem, come with a solution. And because I don't pretend to have all the answers, and if we both don't have the answers, we can figure it out. So that's my only caveat to my staff, is come with a solution or be prepared to come up with a solution with me. Because I think it's a collaborative effort, because I don't see my school as my school, I see it as our school. And so if you create a culture where it's collaborative, then you don't run into those issues. And I try to be very intentional about creating a space where my staff can speak to me about things that bother them. I know you and I talked before about, relations with your administrators, things of that nature, and that's important. So I would gather that they take things from you because you're an effective teacher, like you said, that you listen to your intuition, obviously, and then you're strategic about how you communicate to your administrator.
Right.
That those things that you just said, and absolutely, I can see those things are working if you are that teacher that you don't know how to use your voice. And also just go to your administrator, one-to-one. But like you said, sometimes that doesn't always work. That's the best case scenario. And then you have to find other ways that you can really amplify your voice.
Right. And sometimes, I think in the times that I've gone to my administrator just to share concerns and things like that, to me, I felt like I was doing that because I'm doing it. I'm doing it out of respect. I'm coming to you and I'm sharing with you some of these concerns, one-to-one, so that, we're not in a public setting where I'm asking all these questions and things like that, right? But I'm coming to you and I'm actually just sharing these things and helping, maybe we can, use some solutions. And I've always said to the school leaders that I've worked with, use me as a resource. Right now I'm a special education teacher, but I told my administrator, I'm a special education teacher, but here are the other things that I have done. And here is the background that I have. So this is the position that I have, but I I can do other things. So, don't hesitate to tap into me. Like if you need someone to, if there are ideas or things that you want to brainstorm and plan, like I'm here, because I am that person that when we're coming up with the plan, like you need somebody who's going to poke holes in things so you can make sure that that plan is tight. And I'm that person. And I've, not all administrators have been receptive to that, but the ones that have, like, then that I felt like that's always been like a stronger relationship that we can have from that.
And that's absolutely true, because I do that. And I try to, and I have an idea, I try to take it to those who are in the trenches first and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about it?
Right.
And then I try to vary that. And you're so true. I remember when I did have a principal coach, one of the things she told me early on in my career is that when you have a team that you're collaborating with or you're getting input from, you don't always want the people who are going to agree with you. You want the person and the people who are going to poke holes in it, because they're going to be the people who are not talking, saying what they really want to say. And so you need that person to be really honest before you put something out there and it just flops. So that's so true. But I don't think all administrators actually think about that in the beginning of their career, though, because you're thinking, I'm going to get all the people who are aligned to my vision and do what I think we should do, and not think about, okay, what about that person? Let me think of a person who might not quite be there, and let me have them on my team so that I can anticipate some of the things that might come up. That's so, that is true. But I didn't learn, I learned that a little bit later. I didn't learn that early as an administrator.
Right.
And I think that's a whole nother thing when you have a coach and a mentor to help you do those things. That's a whole nother live talk about mentorship, the importance of it. Okay, so you talk about you've been a teacher, you've been an administrator. Which one did you like the best, or did you not? Did you like one better than the other? Would you go back to leadership? Inquiring minds want to know.
I love being a teacher, but my favorite like leadership role is as a literacy coach. Like that was my favorite. I love coaching teachers. I think the time I did administration, I really can't just base it on that experience, because it was just a very unique experience. So I think for me, what I loved about coaching was really being able to work with teachers and developing their craft. And I was a literacy coach, so like really developing them in that specific area. And that's what I would do again. Like I would absolutely become a literacy coach again if an opportunity presented itself, like at the elementary level, just because I think, I'm that coach that's going to really just like really coach. I'm going to walk you through the process. I'm going to model it for you. We're going to do some co-teaching. I'm going to help you plan. I always wanted my teachers to feel successful. I've had strong relationships with the teachers that I coached, and that's definitely something that I can see myself doing again. But I still love like the classroom element. And I think that's why I love coaching, because when I was a coach, I was doing a lot of like demo lessons, co-teaching. So I was still a part of the classroom, and then the students got to know me as well. So that's the part of it that I like. And I felt like as an administrator, that wasn't able to happen as much. It was because there were so many other things going on, other than just like the instructional leadership portion of it. So that would be, like I said, I love the classroom, being a classroom teacher, but I could definitely see myself going into literacy coaching or just coaching in general.
That's so true, because I call myself getting my fix. I'll, go into a classroom and I'll let a teacher know, hey, you can go take a break, or can I model something for you, because I love instruction. I also, being a literacy coach and also supervising literacy coaches, that is my heart, literacy. But I just truly enjoy just coaching, teachers, to the point where, that was at one point my goal was to, teach it on collegiate levels, to do that. But I think when you empower teachers, you influence and you increase student achievement. If that's where you really want to put the most bang for your buck, is in that teacher coaching. And I think that's really important.
Yes, absolutely.
As a teacher or as a coach, did you have the administrators that you worked under, did you see them as instructional leaders as well, or were they more so managerial? What did you?
I rarely had leaders that I saw as instructional leaders. A lot of it was just, managing teachers, managing the other admin. I rarely had leaders that would like step into the classroom to do a demo lesson, or to even just be able to coach me on my coaching, things like that. Like now I had a when I was a coach, we had a manager who was outside of the school who was over the coaches, and he was the person that was really just doing all of like modeling how to coach, modeling the debriefs, modeling how to give professional development, like doing that type of work. But I did not have leaders that were doing those types of things. I think I've seen, especially now, I've seen a lot of leaders kind of delegate it to their APs, but still then I'm just not seeing, I mean, in the types of the schools I've been in, I'm not seeing enough leaders get into the classrooms. Like I'm just not seeing that happen enough. And I think back as a coach and just even as a teacher, like I've seen, and this is a sad reality, but I've seen more teachers that were just struggling as opposed to teachers that were just like really strong at their craft. I've seen way more teachers that needed coaching, that didn't necessarily have it, and kind of continued on. And that's always been, and I think that kind of fueled some of the work that I do now, because it's so hard for me to be able to go into a classroom and see a teacher who is struggling and then, not be able to do something like if I'm a teacher too, and my schedule is limited, but then seeing when they have somebody that's supposed to be their coach, that's not really giving them the feedback that they need. And I don't necessarily know now, like in some schools, sometimes we have coaches that sometimes we have leaders that did not go to school for leadership or don't have credentials in like coaching and things like that. That's a thing. That's a thing, especially in
that's a real thing. Yeah, that's a real thing. And I think you made a really good point. Even for me, like I took, one, I like being in the classroom. So I know at one point in my career, I felt like, or there's times a year that I feel like I'm not in classrooms enough. But I have to be very intentional. Like I tell my secretary, I don't care unless the building's on fire. I'm going in classrooms. Don't disturb me. I'll get to it when I come back. Like you have to be intentional. You have to put on your calendar.
Yeah.
Luckily I have, supervisors that are supportive of that. Like I don't check my emails necessarily during the day. I get them after work so I can stay in the classrooms. Now I know I walk in the hallway and I get pulled 50 directions, and I have every intention to get into those classrooms, but I really try to do that and be intentional. But you have to carve out the time and make it plain to your leadership team or whomever that this is protected time and it's protected time for students. So
yeah, absolutely.
Right. And even though I did coaching because I had to coach literacy coach and so forth, I took a coaching endorsement because I wanted to improve my craft in coaching. Because there's an art to coaching.
There is.
Like you just go into leadership and then you just can coach. But I've also been, I've talked to other colleagues who've had principals or assistant principals or just administrators, and they didn't know how to coach that teacher. And it was a teacher who you could have really captured or cultivated, and they didn't know how to do that, and they ended up leaving.
Right.
And so that's and that's the sad part about it, is that we lose really great, awesome teachers when we don't know how to coach them appropriately or fill their buckets, as my dad said.
Absolutely.
Fill their buckets.
Absolutely. The majority of teachers that I come across that are considering like leaving their school or leaving the profession, a lot of times it's because they just they feel stagnant. They feel like they're not growing. They feel like no one is really like pouring into them or coaching them or helping to develop them. And it's just not, it's making the profession not feel as good as it once used to. So I definitely agree with you.
Why does Black Girls Teach focus on educators of color? What's unique about educators of color for you?
I think, my experience that I have gone through first as a Black woman, right? And as a Black woman educator, I feel like to me, it's just number one, just like being a Black person, number one, but now like I am a Black woman and I am a Black woman educator who oftentimes I've been in spaces with predominantly students of color and predominantly white leadership. Those are many of the spaces that I've been in, not all, but I feel like there are certain things that in terms of the needs of women of color that are just unique in terms of just the support, the mentorship, the microaggressions that we experience. I know for me as a Black woman, I have to be thinking about my facial expressions. I have to be thinking about my tone. I have to be thinking about just like, do I sound mean, or do I like, there's just so many things that I have to think about. And I think when you are, you know, for me as a Black woman educator, you know, when you are strong in the classroom, people automatically assume like you're good, you know, because there's so many other people who might need more support. So a lot of times you might be left alone, but then that is not really helping you to develop. Right. And I've had, you know, situations like that where I just felt like, okay, I am not growing, or, you know, you didn't like what I said, even though everything I said was accurate, you know, you just didn't like the way it came out, or you didn't like that it was so direct. And I think that a lot of times those are things that we have to deal with just as women. But then I also think that just as being a Black woman adds another layer to it, or a woman of color, like it adds another layer to it that many times people are not willing to address. And I feel like for me, I thought about what are the things that helped me to be able to stay in my career for so long. And it was being able to have just a circle of other Black women educators around me who were able to pour into me and empower me and listen to my ideas and walk me through things and help me practice conversations and craft emails and those types of things. And I've only gotten that from other Black women educators. Like, I have never experienced anybody else other than Black women educators who have given me that level of mentorship that I needed. And I found that, you know, there's not enough of that in our career. Like, some people are lucky enough and they have mentors, right? That's true. Not everybody has that. I went through my career without having a mentor, you know, just having maybe my friends, they kind of became my mentors, you know, the circle, because I worked at different schools and I met some great people along the way. And those people have become like my circle, my friends, and they became my mentors. But there are a lot of Black women educators and educators of color who don't have that mentorship. And there are certain skills that we might need to work on that no one's really telling us that we need to work on. No one's having those hard conversations about things that perhaps could really like leverage us and get us into a different position or a promotion or things like that. So I think that's really, there's just a need.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because throughout my career, I had great women around me, but not a lot of women of color educators around me, other than ones that, of course, that I went to school with, you know, in college and things of that nature. But in terms of my actual job, and I always felt this personal responsibility as a woman of color to represent well the students of color that were in a building. And so that's that added pressure too. Like, am I, you know, reaching that standard, or am I really modeling what I want my students to be able to see in me? You know, that's an added pressure. I know there's certain things I put on myself. I know it's a lot of it, but you know, as I've grown as a leader, again, it goes back to cultivating and really getting people to understand their unique differences and how that impacts and how it contributes to the school. And so I think that makes, you know, a big difference. I'm going to read you a stat and I want you to tell me what you think about it. Okay. So I recently wrote a stat that says nationally, 19% of teachers of color move schools or leave the profession annually, as compared to 15% of white teachers. So a mover rate, which is like transferring from school to school, is much higher. So why do you think that is, and how do you think we should disrupt that teacher turnover?
So I think that schools often, and districts in general, often don't have like a strategic plan to retain teachers of color. Like, I think that they think about teachers in just a bucket. And first, I think schools and districts don't really there's just not a clear retention plan, period. But we're not thinking about, okay, how are we holding on to teachers of color? How are we holding on to Black educators? And I know for me, I did, my friend and I, one of the executive team members of Black Girls Teach, we did a presentation on Black teacher retention. And what we did was we surveyed different Black educators around the country and asked them like the reasons why they were leaving. Okay. And almost all of the reasons had to do with adult issues, feeling like they were not growing, feeling like they were seeing, like they were seeing things in leadership that they didn't agree with, and they just didn't feel safe enough to be able to express that, or they saw how people were treated when they did speak out, and how they were silenced, how they were pushed out. Like this is really a thing that happens in many schools. And we have educators, and I think I was talking to one of my friends and I was saying, you know, I don't think people think about sometimes, for me as a Black educator teaching predominantly Black students, there's often, you know, just a different level of, there's just a different level of different feelings that you're experiencing sometimes. And I know, like, I've had students who, they're in my classroom, everything's going great, and then I've seen them go to other classrooms with other teachers who didn't have the same high expectations, or just the same relationship, and I've seen those students start to change. And I remember talking to somebody, I was like, it really hurts my spirit when I see students really just change as a result of the teachers that they have and the environment that's created. And there's just I don't know, that feeling is just, it's a feeling that I think a lot of teachers feel, where you feel almost powerless, because, you know, like, okay, yes, I can continue a relationship with my students and go to their football games and things of that nature. But like, at some point you have to acknowledge that, like, there's only so much I can do. But it's just, when we know what they're up against, you know, when we know what can happen if they decide to, like, you know, turn to the streets instead of turning to school, like, there's just a level of seriousness about this work that that is just, there are just so many different emotions. And I think for me, again, I feel that way because when I see my students, I see family members, I see, like, they could be my children, they could be my cousins, they could be, you know, my neighbors. And I think sometimes that pressure, that guilt, those different feelings that I think Black women in particular, we are, you know, many of us are maternal figures, you know, many of us, like, other mothering is a part of our DNA, where we sometimes step into these mother roles, even when we're not mothers. And, you know, when we see our children going down a path, or you see them, like, in a classroom that is just, you know, because the structures that are in there are not set up for their success, or you see a teacher who doesn't see the potential in them, it's hard. That's a hard feeling. Really hard. And I've seen many educators just, like, walk away because they're so frustrated. They feel powerless. They don't know what to do. They're like, maybe I just need to go to another school. Maybe I need to go to another profession. But until schools actually come up with a plan to address the needs of educators of color, and if they want to be more specific to the demographic that they have there, those educators, like, until we're coming up with a plan, it's going to continue being a problem.
You hit a key thing. You know, you said, you know, districts and schools, like, it has to be a concerted effort to ensure, you know, I've heard, even on your in some of your retreats and the conferences I've attended, and just listening to some of the teachers, they don't feel culturally empowered or affirmed, right? They don't feel that there's a career ladder for them. They've tried, they know they might have been the best person, but for whatever reason, you know, or they don't get to make movement, or that it's not articulated what, like you said, what needs to happen for them to do that. That mentorship is missing, because it may not be many of you to mentor, you know, and it's something different when you have an educator of color. You need that alignment, you need that collaboration, you need that sisterhood, you need someone who's going to be honest with you about what it is that you need. And sometimes we don't get that honesty, you know, we find out a different way, and when it's down the line, like, oh, if I'd known that, then I could have corrected it back then. So you make a really good point about that. And then, you know, schools and, you know, principals just have to create a culture where teachers are affirmed, and to really tap into, it goes back to relationships though. If you know your staff, you know what they need. I mean, there are many times, sometimes where I see things in my staff that they don't see in themselves. And I'm intentional about that. I can tell you, I have about 5 or 6 teachers in my building now that start off as paraprofessionals, because I truly believe in pouring into others and moving them up and giving them the best that they can be. Because I'm like, you're a paraprofessional, you're teaching already. You might as well go back to school and just finish it. Come on, be a teacher. And so that's my way of empowering and pulling back and trying to really cultivate, those individuals in my building who I know would benefit my students. You know what I mean? So it's so important to know that. But I think it also goes back to, do you know who you are? Do you have a sense of knowing who you are and knowing your worth? Because like I was saying on that panel, what's your why? Like, you have a choice of, you going to stay where you are, or are you going to go somewhere where you feel more appreciated? And I realize some people don't have that option depending on what their situation is. But I tell people all the time, you should be interviewing the school just as much as I'm interviewing.
Yes, I say that too.
Like we have our standard questions, but I'm going to ask you, what's your passion? What's the last book you read? Why children? Why this school? This school is predominantly children of color. Why this school? Why not another school? And I really want to dig deep, because I don't want just the layman, I believe all children can learn. That's out the window. That's cliche. That's old.
Right.
There has to be different ways of finding. And then my standard question is, do you have questions for us? And if you don't have questions, that's always a red flag for me. Like, I don't tell you everything intentionally. Ask me questions. Know about how I feel about children of color. How do I cultivate, and how am I, creating culturally relevant pedagogy in my school? Like, ask me those questions. And so we just have to do better in understanding our why and our worth. And I think that would help with bring your voice out and just being, in a place where you feel appreciated. Like, I know I've heard you talk before about, DC is not the only place you've taught. Obviously, you decided to go places where you felt like you were more comfortable. And and that wasn't hard. Like, you just rooted up and went to a whole nother state.
Yep. I mean, I have worked at 7 different schools, and I used to be like ashamed to say that, because that's a lot of schools, which it is. But I am the type of person where if I don't feel like I am growing, if I feel like this is just not, if it doesn't align with what I know, and I'm gonna make a move. Make a move. Now, one of those schools was, I had to make a move because of, like, it was furlough type of thing or whatever. But and that actually, I really loved that school. But yeah, I'm not afraid to. I will, if I feel like it's time for me to move on, I'm gonna move on. If it's bringing me stress, and that's one of the reasons why I had left the leadership position that I was in. I was like, this is not what I signed up for. There are too many toxic things going on in here that have that are not about the job. It's just like, there were just too much toxic stuff. And I'm big on, I can't, if I feel like it's adding into my life, then I gotta go. I got to go. So I, and sometimes it's hard because you have to leave students behind, but I also know that, like, I'm not going to be good in that place if I'm unhappy. Like, I'm just not going to be. So I'd rather go somewhere else and be able to feel like more appreciated, or at least hopefully get, a better situation. And, that's all you can do sometimes.
That's all you can do. Those of you who are just joining us, thank you. I see you guys. I'm saying hi to you guys. I see you all waving. We're here with Deidra Fogarty, who is CEO and founder of Black Girls Teach, and she's an educator. She's an activist. I say you're an activist. And she is someone who I brought on today because she's known for amplifying voices, especially women of color, educators of color. And I wanted to bring her on today because I wanted to amplify her voice. So I want to give back. And I am so appreciative of Deidra because she actually reached out to me and allowed me to use my voice at one of her retreats this summer, which was awesome. And I've attended a couple of your conferences and retreats at this point. So if you have not checked out Black Girls Teach on social media, please do. She has some really good nuggets for your soul and things that you may not have thought about. And it's not just for women of color. She has some thoughts for all educators. So just be mindful of that, because I think oftentimes people think when they think, well, Black Girls Teach or any kind of platform is only for, you can learn some things from other people. And, Gloria Glasson Billings talked about that, and children, particularly needing to know, even our our Caucasian students need to have teachers of color, experience that. And so they need to be able to recognize and appreciate, different races. And so that's something that we absolutely. So I want to thank Deidra for coming on. So if you all have any questions you all want to put in the chat box for Deidra, let me know, and I'll ask those questions. If you have comments, I'll shout you out as well for those comments. So one of the things that as a school administrator, we oftentimes can get caught up in our leadership roles and world. And so one of my questions to you from the teacher, if you were talking to me or if I had a panel of school administrators right here, what would you tell me would be the best strategies in ensuring that I am supporting my teachers of color in the building? What would I need to do as an administrator?
I mean, I think it starts with just being able to listen to them, by either if you're able to individually check in, or I know some schools are starting to have more affinity groups and things of that nature. Like, I think those are things that can be powerful, because you want your teachers to be able to feel comfortable with sharing their concerns. You want them to feel like that emotional safety with being able to share whatever those things are with you. Right. So I think as an administrator, you need to think about be reflective in your practices and reflective in saying like, okay, how do I handle feedback? How will I handle it if someone tells me that this practice that I'm doing is kind of oppressive, and then they give me some reasons why. Am I open to that? Or does that make me feel like, no, you have to be self-reflective in how you are able to accept feedback. And it's not easy to accept feedback, especially when you've made like a great plan and you've executed it. And then you have somebody saying, well, I just read this book and, I just took this class and I think what you're doing is not in line with our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. At this point now, we have to be able to listen to people when they say those things, so be open to the conversation. And I think more administrators need to have people on their leadership team that are not like themselves, people that are going to think differently, people that are going to push them to be able, people that are going to push them, maybe a part of their leadership team, to be able to accept feedback and give feedback. Because I think when you start that culture of feedback with your leadership team, it lends itself to really being able to do that with your staff. So just really being able to create those spaces to listen to your staff and trying to listen without judging the tone, and listen without judging like how long it takes for them to say what they're saying, or listen to them without looking at their, like, all those other things that get in the way of communication. Sometimes you just gotta listen.
Yeah, especially going back to your point earlier about sometimes it's you're being a woman of color or educator, you perceive a difference a certain way when you're passionate about something, right? How you communicate something or how you come in, it can be, misconstrued as something else instead of listening to, behind. And then I take opportunity sometimes too, as, a leader of color, if I'm speaking with an educator, and trying to mentor and giving them some strategies and how your voice can be heard better, so that it's not lost in the body language and the tone and so forth, because you can be just as effective in doing so. And then you have to kind of know your audience. You have to know who you're speaking with. I may have a different conversation with a peer that I may have with my principal, that I may have with my assistant principal, and so forth. But it's also kind of knowing, but that if you have a relationship with that person, if you kind of know, you just know, if you take time to get to know that person and what and how they communicate. It's about listening to each other, like you said.
And I mean, it's interesting you said that, because so we have the Black Girls Teach membership, the empowerment circle. And so each month we have a different focus area. And so next month we're focusing all about communication. And those are the things that we are going to discuss and practice, because I think sometimes, we do have to be mindful of certain things. And I think that some of us just need a little bit of practice sometimes of just being able to articulate what it is that we're trying to say, so that when people will actually listen. So like a lot of those things that you talked about, those are going to be the things that we talk about next month, just because I found that, you know, many educators struggle with that, and they don't really have a space to practice that skill.
Right. Or someone to be honest with them and say, I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to take that. But let me tell you next time how I would like would like for you to communicate your concerns to me. And I've done that I've done it, especially being virtual, right? Because we're not face to face, and a lot of things, just like with email, we say things can get lost by how you send an email. It's the same thing being virtual or over the phone, or, you know, when your camera's off and all I hear is your voice. I'm like, okay, was she saying that like this, or was she saying that like this? You know, I'm just like in my head, and it's just natural because you can't see if your camera's not on. But I've done that where I've called a teacher and say, hey, you know, you had a really good point. You really did. And I'm going to look into that. I said, but let me tell you how next time, how I would prefer that you communicate that concern to me. Because I wasn't sure how to take it. I didn't know if you were upset about it or whatever. And they quickly explained, no, I wasn't. I was just, great. We're on the same page. Let's work on that.
Right.
You know, but I'm more comfortable in doing that. Now, my early principal, Captain Kirk, might not have done that.
Yeah.
You know, because early on, I want to build relationships. I want them to, you know, like me or be, you know, be open. I'm about kumbaya, whatever you want to call it. But now I'm more bold and aware for myself. And I understand that I have part of my why has to be to help, to mentor, you know, whether it's a teacher or a colleague, you know, we do it with each other. Because you know what? You know, I don't know if you should have said it to the teacher. Like, like, I don't know if I would have said it, you know, it's not that bad. Or, you know, we talk each other off the ledge. So I think that is important.
Yeah.
You know, we need it too. Leaders do need it too. So one of the things that I really appreciate about you and the fact and Black Girls Teach is that you have a platform that obviously transcends race, gender, class, and not all organizations can say that, right? I know you have a huge following, which I know you said before that it's not about the following because, you know, or the likes, you know, the little thing like that. But I think people respect you because you have action behind your words. If for educators who, and what I'm seeing since the pandemic are a lot more, what I'm pleased to see is I see a lot more educators of color coming out, right?
Yeah.
More on social media, they're speaking their mind, they have businesses, they're putting them out there, we're supporting each other. It's unfortunate it takes something like this to do that, but I always say, you know, pandemic just made us sit still a little bit so we can see each other more. So I'm pleased to see that and be clicking on and following all these different people who I didn't get to do. And that's one thing I will also tell someone, an educator or a leader, if you're trying to find that mentorship or you're trying to find some people out there that are aligned with your like-mindedness, your thinking, that, you know, social media could be a really good platform. That's how I met you, you know? And so, and I've met some other people through you and other, you know, places that I think, he's like, you know, I really could, if we were not in this pandemic and weren't social distancing, I would go out to lunch with her.
Right.
I would go to a conference with her. I know we would show up. So I think that's really important to do that. So how would you say, if I'm an educator and I really have something I want to say, I really want a platform, what should I do? Should I just create a group and be like, oh, do I just start posting things and talking about things? How do I create a platform of my own based on or align with my own passion?
I think that, you know, it kind of just starts with, I would just say create a page where you start sharing those things, you know. You just start sharing what you feel, sharing things that you like, and just, I think that is the first step, because sometimes people have a little bit of anxiety about just social media and posting and things like that. So I would say just start there, but then I would also push you to just get a little bit more clarity about, well, what is it that you're passionate about? Like, what do you want other people to learn from you? What can they learn from you? What would you be interested in teaching other people? Some people have a lot of clarity with that, and some people have to dig a little bit deeper. And I think it's helpful when you start a page to know more about what the purpose for the page is. Is the purpose because you just want to share your voice, which is absolutely fine. Is the purpose you want to be able to meet educators like yourself and build a community? Or is the purpose because you're wanting to eventually, go into consulting or something, or start your own business, or just start a group with like-minded educators?
Right.
Those are all things that you can be thinking about as you're posting and sharing more about your beliefs and in your life and who you are.
That's really, I mean, and that's cool. You're definitely right. You have to know why you're doing it. If you're
Right.
doing it just to be liked, that is definitely not the plan, because I'm sure not everyone agrees or likes your page or the things that you
Right.
say. So you have to have a thick skin. That's for one. And like you said, you have to be able to affirm yourself and know what you're talking about. You said that early on, like you have to have credibility. You can't
Yeah.
be the one talking out there and not doing it. Like,
Right. And so I think some educators, are going for because, we live in an age where people are influencers and all of that jazz. And I think sometimes people are doing it for that reason as well. Like, I
right,
think people are also stepping into it because they want to be a teacher influencer, and they want to be able to, and okay. But my thing is that I've said several times on my platform, it's like, when we think about influencers in other areas, they're not educators. Like, our job I take the work that we do so seriously. And if I'm going to be an educator influencer, it comes with a huge amount of responsibility.
right,
So if you are an educator who has influence where people actually listen to you, like, I really hope you're saying something that is going to impact change. Like, I hope your page is moving beyond posting cute bulletin boards and teachers pay teachers products and all that stuff. Like, I hope there's more substance behind that, because you have a huge platform. Like,
yeah,
you have a huge platform. You have people interviewing you. This is the opportunity where you could really, like, you could speak up for us educators. But there are
yeah.
too many people that are getting these huge platforms. They're not talking about how Black Lives Matter.
That's
They're
so
not
true.
talking about educational issues. They're just talking about pens and markers and bulletin boards. And I'm at the point where it's just like, we got to start calling this out, because these people who have this influence, you have the power to really bring about change. And our education system is in need of change. It's in need of reform. But, just using your platform I don't know, it's just like, we're
Yeah,
not makeup influencers. We're not hair influencers. It's not the same vibe.
right,
We're educators that
right,
actually impact children's lives.
right. And
So
you
there's
might
a
be in a
certain level
place
of
of privilege.
seriousness that comes with it.
Right. You might be in a place of privilege, but not everyone else is. And
Right.
so if you're an educator, you're an educator, period. And so we should be able to speak to, because I don't understand how you can be an educator regardless, because when you're an educator, you should be fighting for equity, period. So regardless if you're in a school that needs it or not, which I believe that most everyone's in a school of some sort that can really fight for some kind of equity. And you're right, you have to, if you have a large, because there's some people who have like thousands of people.
100,000.
Yeah, and you're right. They don't say anything.
They don't
Even
talk
during
about
the time of
any
the pandemic.
stuff
Yeah, it's
substance.
just, yeah, it's quite interesting. It really is quite interesting. And so you say to yourself, and I don't know if it's for fear of them thinking they'll lose followers or whatever that may be, but you're right. And I don't have a huge following, but I try to take every opportunity to amplify other voices, especially women of color, educators of color, leaders of color, because that's just my why. Like, that's what I want to do. And when I first started this journey on social media, I did it really for the purpose of amplifying my school. Like, I wanted people to know that over here in this little city, I have majority, children of color, and we do great things. Like, we do have great things going on. That was my intent. And then I started really, and when I first started, I saw more people with those platforms, Caucasian women, even school, even leaders. And I was like, well, gosh, there's not a lot of us out there. We didn't have pages. We weren't putting things out there about our schools. And so, but then I started to see it evolve, and I felt really good about it, because I think there's space for everyone.
Right.
Everyone. And I don't think, in no judgment, if you haven't started doing it, and you need to do it, go ahead and start doing it. You weren't doing it before, okay. But now you have an opportunity to do it. And there's a lot to talk about with equity, with everything going on.
Yes. And I think, I mean, that's why I've always, you know, even before the pandemic happened, I think, because I feel like it kind of pushed people into a lot of people who maybe weren't as thinking about it as much. But like, I always would tell my educators of color, like, we got to get comfortable with social media, and not because, you know, for me, it's not to become an influencer. It's not to become, you know, doing sponsored posts and things like that. And like at the end of the day, sometimes you do that because it brings in income, but that's not the purpose, right? If we really want to get our voice out there, if we really want to position ourselves so that when they do tap into people, when they ask people to talk about an educational issue, you're using social media to position yourself for that, so that you can be that voice. So that's the reason, like, to me, it's like a social justice issue. Like the work that I'm doing, yes, it's part of creating a following and an Instagram account or whatever. But at the end of the day, when a news show asks about like who's an educator that we need to talk to, I want to be able to raise my hand and be like, hey, you can come talk to me, right? But then if you have all these other people, because that's what they look at. They'll look at people who have a following, right? Unless they know you personally, unless they know like your network and you have a connection, because sometimes that's how it is too. But they're looking at people who have a following, and if all they're seeing is, you know, these people who are just posting cutesy stuff, who are not going to push the envelope, they're not going to have these conversations, then it's just like, damn, like, are we ever going to have a voice? So that's why I say to educators of color, we got to step it up. We got to be comfortable. And that's some of the things like that I'm working on, just trying to create ways to teach other people about social media branding and, you know, all the things, so that we can position ourselves. So when that time comes and people actually want to start really talking about education, they'll be talking about it with individuals who, yes, they might have a following, but they also have some substance behind it.
Right. And we encourage, we welcome allies, you know, and that's the thing. We definitely welcome allies, and you can be an ally to the work. And that's the main thing. And we're not saying to take over your social media platform, but we are saying is be true to who you are. That's who you are, that's who you are. But again, you know, if you're educating children, especially children of color, I don't know how you don't infuse something in your social media about the work. I just don't know how you do it.
Right. And not using it as a place of like, like of pity, because I've seen that happen where I had to unfollow a couple people because it was just like, you know, I teach in a low income school, and like, you know, just stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, you know, like trying to feel bad for you, but it's just like, honey, this is what you signed up for. This is the work.
Yeah, you have to be
work. You're not about to be using it as a place of pity.
Right. Exactly. No. Absolutely.
The work.
Absolutely. Yes. You got people here talking about preach, Deidra. Walk the walk and talk the talk. Substance. We are life developers, Deidra Hannibal. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Shauna Radiant, walk the walk, talk the talk. Deidra Hannibal says, ain't saying nothing. And Shauna Radiant, need to have real conversations. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, all of that. All of that.
Yes.
Okay. So we only have a couple more minutes, a couple minutes. And so I want to play a game. You ready?
Okay.
It's called Rapid Fire.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Starting first, the first question. What is your favorite color?
Purple.
Of course. Mine too. Who's your favorite artist?
Oh, I forgot. Let me think. I love so many people. Okay, that's why it's so hard. But
who did you listen to today?
Okay, who was I listening to today? I was listening to Brandy today.
Okay.
Yes, because I was thinking about her versus battle. It's gonna be Brandy versus Monica.
I know, Monica.
And I was like, good. Brandy has some really good albums, so she's up there. I haven't listened to a lot of her music, her newer music, but like I think I like people from that era of when I was like, you know, younger. Yeah, I like that era.
Me too. What book are you currently reading?
Oh, I'm actually reading what's it called? The Pedagogy of Confidence. And I have it right there on the floor. Yep. Pedagogy by Yvette Jackson. And are you reading that book? You got that book?
No, I'm reading the book, Goldie Muhammad, Cultivating Genius.
That's all. I have that book. I bought it and it took a minute to get here. So
yeah,
I didn't,
because they were sold out. It is so good, Deidra.
Yes, I'm going to read that one next. But you got to read this book too, The Pedagogy of Confidence.
What's the name of it?
The Pedagogy of Confidence, Inspiring High Intellectual Performance in Urban Schools by
Okay.
Yvette Jackson. When I tell
Kathy,
you
put that in my chat.
that book is good.
Deidra or Rashana, put that in the chat. Pedagogy of Confidence for me.
It's great. It's a great book.
Okay, I'm gonna get that one. Okay, what is your favorite children's book?
My favorite children's book is Mufaro's Beautiful Daughters.
Oh,
I think that's what it's called, right? Yes. It's like this based on Cinderella. So I don't remember reading that as a child, but I read it like when I was second grade teacher, and my students always loved it. It's a great book to teach character trait. There's so much you can teach with that book. Yeah, and I love it.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. What was the last thing you did within the last week that brought you joy?
I think the last thing I did that brought me joy was I went on a walk with one of my friends, and she took me somewhere that I would never go on a walk to, because it was like it was very naturey, and I'm not as naturey as I thought I was. It was too many noises of just like trees and noises, and then there was like this little lake bridge that we had to go over, and I was scared, but it was like I was scared to go over the bridge, and I was scared of all the noises, but it was actually really fun. I actually really enjoyed it. It was nice to be outside because I feel like I'm in my house a lot because of this whole pandemic thing, but it was nice to just go for a walk. And she's actually a principal, so Monday was her first day. It was my first day as well. So we were like, let's do this. Let's make sure we go for a walk once a week. So that's what we committed to.
She took you out of your comfort zone. You need friends like that.
She did. She definitely did. And I told her, I was like, we ain't never going back there again. But then I was like, I did have fun. That was cool.
Did have fun.
I liked it.
And my last question, what is your favorite self-care practice?
My favorite self-care, look, I'm big into, and even though people say like bubble baths that's not self-care, but self-care is whatever brings you joy. Because it's like a cliche thing, right? But I love bubble baths. Like I love
my Epsom salt with the different scent.
I do the whole thing. I have my Epsom salt, I have my oils, I have my soft music, I have my candles, like a glass of wine. I mean, I love it. And what I do is like, so if I know a full moon is coming, like I will, because they say that that's a good time to just like, take that time to set your intention. So I'll try to keep track of like when there's a full moon, and then set the bath and try to, think about like, okay, like what are some intentions that I want to bring into this new moon? Those are things that I've been doing. So I love taking bubble baths.
I like that. All right, I like that. Okay, so my last question is, what does Black Girls Teach have in store for us? So the next couple of months or so, give us the tea.
So a couple of things that I'm thinking about, just different ways for us to be able to have conversation. So we've been doing retreats, and we're going to still continue doing that, but I want to be able to create ways to the people that are watching the retreats, like to be able to bring them into the conversation. And there are different panels, like, that can do that, where you're talking and you could bring somebody on screen. Like, I want to do things like that, but have like really, really real conversations about educational issues. And also just thinking about how to partner with other educational organizations, because I really want to get into doing more like teacher training and teacher development. So right now we're potentially partnering with organizations where we can be doing that work, and just helping to develop teachers and helping to provide the space that many of them need with the affinity groups and things of that nature. I have my Black Girls Teach membership group, and it's such a wonderful place. And I mean, in terms of our membership, like I really wanted it to kind of just start off as just being a small group of people that are just, really trying to empower one another, uplift one another. And it's just, I didn't realize I was going to get so much out of it. I was going to get so much out of just being around other Black women. So just continuing to do that and continuing to bring in people to the membership group to be able to help them. And then I'm also working on creating some resources for social media branding and strategizing, because like I said, I think it's a great way for educators to position themselves so that, again, build that following. So I'm thinking about coming up, I'm working on doing different things like workbooks, but then also doing like coaching groups. So I can work with a handful of people, one like in a small group for 5 to 6 sessions where we're laying out this whole plan so people feel really confident and ready to go with taking their social media to the next level, because there's so many amazing educators out there who, you know, might not know how social media works. Like one of my close friends, the friend I was talking to, I took a walk with the principal, she is just a wealth of knowledge, but she's that person that's just like, I don't know about
I don't know that.
right. So like, so there's so many people out there who are just doing the damn thing, who just need a little extra nudge and support, and I want to help those people to be able to position themselves. So
because you know, I've learned a lot from my sisters who are into this, you know, they're doctors, but they do this kind of work on the medical side. But I learned a lot from on the educational side from you and Crystal. So, you know, I've learned, shout out to Crystal Allen.
Yes, Crystal.
Yes, Crystal, shout out to Crystal. And so, but that's that village, you know. So I had to align myself with like-minded people. And not everyone's an educator, but they're, you know, in a field, another field, but they're educating others. And so that's so important. And I think that's what people really need. They need that push and someone who's done it before, that mentorship. Oh, and Deidra said, by the way, and come in unapologetically educated season 2, by the way.
Wait, say that. What is? Say that
Deidra
again.
Hannibal said you got to come on her show in season 2, by the way. That's on your list.
Okay, yes.
I got you, Deidra. I got you. I'm so appreciative that you came on. Can you tell everybody how can they get in touch with you? How can they contact you if they want, you know, just can pick your brain, they want professional learning or professional development for their schools, their teachers, other leaders?
So, I mean, follow our page, Black Girls Teach. We're on Instagram. And there's a link there that leads you to all the different ways you can get in contact with me, but you can email hello@blackgirlsteach.com. There are different types of services that I provide. Like we do consulting with schools. I provide like one-on-one different types of things, and I'm actually going to be doing some type of intensive where I'm going to have people that I can work with one-on-one for like a full day. Just because sometimes there's just so many things that we can be working on to really, again, it's really, to me, it's all about positioning yourself, like positioning yourself to be able to be that authority in whatever it is, that content area that you are authority in. Many of us already have that expertise, but it's just about, you know, collaborating with like-minded people, or just like being able to make those connections and talk about the issues we need to talk about and just have practice. So just creating opportunities for people to do that. But you can definitely check me out on Instagram, Black Girls Teach, and a little bit of Twitter. I've been doing Twitter once in a while, but
you like Twitter? I've been trying to get into Twitter. I can't.
Sometimes I'll use my Twitter post to post on Instagram. So sometimes I'll like do a Twitter post and then post it on Instagram. But
I have tried to do Twitter. I cannot get into it. I mean, I have an account, but I forget about it.
Me too.
But yeah. So guys, I'm telling you, the next time she has a retreat, I mean, you got to sign up for it. They are so empowering and powerful, because she has an array of women that are in different topics. You think it's just about education, but it's about self-care, it's about empowerment. It just feeds your soul. So I'm super excited. I can't wait to the next conference. So I'll be there, because you know I got you. But,
yes, and I want to bring you in to talk to the women in the membership, because I know that you can just share. Like I said, we're going to be talking about communication, and that would be a great opportunity for you to be able to share your insight as a principal, because I mean, there's just so many different like communication things that,
it is.
You know,
you can amplify your voice and get your point across, and there's an art to it. There definitely is an art to it. And sometimes people don't realize, I know so many people that's kept them back. That simple thing is communication. And people, because they don't know how to communicate, and there's a perception there, and it has nothing to do about your ability. You're a wonderful teacher, educator, but they just can't get beyond the way that you communicate. And so that is important. Sometimes we can hold ourselves back, but on the other hand, sometimes if we're not truthful with each other, then we won't know. You know, we're just going. And so we have to be able to be truthful with each other about that.
Absolutely.
And support each other. So And that's what you did for me today. I appreciate
Oh,
you.
thank you.
I'll be
Thank
forever
you for
grateful.
having me. This was
Yeah, this was
lovely.
fun. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm so excited. So guys, don't forget to check out Deidra on Black Girls Teach. It's a wonderful, thank you, Zarina P. She posted your Instagram page. Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you all share with your friends and family members and other educators. We will have this posted so you can go back and look at it. But I'm so, I don't mind. Please over communicate to me. Zarina P. said, I don't mind. Please over communicate to me. I mean, it's so true because we're not honest with each other sometimes, but that's a whole nother thing. Thank you for coming on. I know you had a long day of work today and you still came on today, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you guys for having me.
Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you. Yep. Somebody said honesty and truthfulness is so important. Yes. Everyone's coming. Everyone's waking up in here. Bye, guys. You all take care.
All right.